Welcome, one and all, to the number one, and I mean best, PPC podcast that is out there. Michael Nadalin is with me on the screen. He is my partner in crime on this PPC Unfiltered podcast. Michael, how's it going, man?
Mate, I'm good. How you going?
Yes, doing fantastic. Thank you for asking. We are in a new year. We've got new things happening. We've got secret projects. There's a lot going on, right? We've got some big accounts. Michael, I want you to start with what we couldn't get to last week because of my terrible beach coastal internet. You had a not so humble brag, but I want you to start there if you can.
Oh yeah, true. To be honest, I was just reflecting on because just for everyone's context, we're doing an episode last week and Cory's internet was just like not working where he was staying. So we just ended up spending the whole hour talking. Interestingly, when we were not recording, the internet was fine. And we had a bunch of segments and now I've honestly forgot about them. So Cory, can you just ping me with and this is why it's unfiltered, because we're being honest. We're both busy business owners.
Yes.
And a week goes by and we forget about stuff. So I believe it was the client that we landed. Is this the big one? Yeah. So I actually did a YouTube video on it this week. I'm not going to announce the client. I think over time, people will either look at one of my business's websites and recognize what the business is. If you just do a Google search, you'd be able to find out which it is. But we have landed and executed a paid ads campaign for a $3.5 billion company with the aim to do about $25 to $40 million in sales in the next probably 4 to 6 months, ideally. And it is lead generation. It's not just purely Google ads. So it's Google ads, meta ads, high converting landing pages. And honestly, it's a lot of deep data, like data analysis. So it was pretty amazing that we got this client. I've built my whole business this way based off word of mouth and referral, because similar to you, Cory, like we do put ourselves out there, but the word of mouth in any business and industry is probably where you're going to get the biggest clients. You can get a lot of clients off the internet running ads, but these really big whale clients are really going to come from your network and people you know, but also maybe even your reputation over time. It could be someone's watched you online and then told someone else they know about you. So that's even a referral from people you don't know. So it's been a wild start to the year. We've had about 5 clients start or agree to start this week alone, and we're only Thursday. Man, it is wild. It's fun. It's exciting. Like, obviously I've got a team, so it's not just Michael Nadalin doing it, but the team is operating at such a high level where it's just like exciting to do this work. Like, and all the clients are like literally the dream clients that I've wanted to work with for years. And these aren't, when people say dream clients, like these huge companies, they're just so aligned with the services that we offer, which is just like really clear e-commerce for Google ads or lead generation for high ticket companies that can make a lot of money. And my goal is to make clients millions of dollars. So like, that's what motivates me. It's what motivates my team. So when we get clients who have the ability to make lots of money, they're not selling candles, they're not selling fidget spinners, they're actually selling things of high value. And it just excites me. It's just what keeps me going. Like, if I kept doing what I was doing a few years ago, I wouldn't be here anymore. It's just keeping that momentum going, working with bigger clients, better clients, more interesting clients, getting more into the data analysis side and the business consulting side, because then when you feed that data back in, man, things just change. So
okay,
that's
bunch of things I want to jump into and ask you about. So I think today's theme is going to be getting organized, particularly for larger accounts. So we have touched on in the past. I wanted to definitely focus on how we approach that from your perspective, where you have a team, and then for me, for you freelancers out there, how I approach it as a freelancer without a team, or at least not like a huge team that I don't just offload a couple of things to sporadically. So I think that's going to be the theme for today's episode. I think that'll be helpful for people.
This is going to be sick.
Top of mind.
Because I want to actually learn off you. Like, as people, I just want to let people know, I deeply respect and look up to Cory. So anytime we're doing this podcast, it's me learning here. I'm not a presenter. I'm a student here. So like, this is an awesome topic. I'm really excited.
Okay, good. So I'm really curious from your perspective. You know, you've got these employees. You guys are onboarding these big clients. How do you think about, generally speaking, you as the owner, are you trying to move away from doing the management yourself and being hands-on with the data? How do you contend with the challenge that you're an analytical person, you're used to like being hands-on with the data and
Yeah.
being really analytical versus letting your staff do that? Where are you with that, and what are some of the challenges?
Mate, awesome question. And it's interesting because I was reflecting on this. I've been reflecting on this during the week, actually, over the last few weeks. And it tends to be most people, when they're not experienced in this area, they think very binary. It's either like you're either doing all the work or most of the work, or you're kind of just like throwing it away to someone else. And my approach is neither of that. I've got this new approach. It's like an 80-20 principle, but I call it 10-80-10. And the first 10% is me, the leader or the strategist, doing the strategy. The first 10%, setting the clear direction. The next 80% is delegating it or outsourcing it to someone else. Not outsourcing, but delegating.
Yeah.
Now, that delegation for some clients is still me, but it could be someone else. And then the last 10% is quality checking. So that would come back to me or the senior person. Now, the reason why I like this approach is it allows a dynamic, flexible approach where, as like the leader, you're not going, if someone asks you a question, you're like, dude, this is what I'm paying you for, or like taking too much on yourself. And one thing I've also noticed is this approach also is why most strategists who are not ads people tend to mess up, is like they do the first 10% of like telling the client all the strategy, then they get some offshore person to do the execution, but that last 10% of quality checking, if you don't have the direct experience, you don't know what's good or bad. So that's why I can either do the accounts myself for some clients, but also at the time I can give it to my team, because I might, for a client that I might have needed to do 100% of the work a few years ago, I can only do 20%, which is strategy and direction and data, and then just like quality checking. So
Okay.
did that kind of answer the
So
question of like how I balance it?
yeah, and how do you contend with the emotional side of it, right? The inherent feeling of like, man, I still want to control things. I want to do it exactly the way that I know how to do it over the last decade, but also I need to give them autonomy. How do you contend with that?
I don't. I've got a team I trust. We do
Okay.
lots of trainings. And more importantly, we do a lot of communications training. A lot of it really comes down to communication. The process that we have internally is we're very aligned strategically. So we do things very similarly. We have structured the account similarly. There's no, I think that's like good question, because like, dude, I worked at agencies where that would be like, yeah, how do I deal with that? I don't have to deal with that because I've set the frame from day one how we operate with accounts and communication. And with those two things interlooping, you start to realize if you want better reporting and communication, you've got to have a better structure in the ad account. And then we just follow the market lead structure.
And
So
am I crazy to think that that wasn't an overnight process for you? That it was, at least in the beginning, a little challenging to let things go and let someone else do them?
yeah, man, honestly, I'll it only is if you don't hire the right person.
Hmm.
Now, I've hired the right people. It's really hard to hire the right people. But I know what the right people require because I've done this for so long. I know what specifically to either look for in a person and what not to look for in a person. Because I've also worked agency. I know what other ad specialists are like. I'm not just like raw dogging myself into the industry and just like picking people off Upwork. I know what the quality is from like the top to the bottom
Hmm.
and what traits to look for. So then when they're onboarding, it's the I've just been fortunate because I've had so much past experience working in agencies. But you're right, like asking these questions, I'm like, I'm actually once again fortunate to know this stuff um, because you've been, yeah. So that's the answer.
Okay. Done. Um, so I see a lot inside of agencies because I provide consulting to agencies that are looking for crazy data analysis, and or they get a really big account and they're like, we don't know how to do this, help
Yeah,
us. So I do see a lot of the inside workings of agencies. And one thing I see a lot is they can never make up their mind on a tool to use for organizing their processes. Has that been something you guys have been challenged by?
no, because I just keep it really simple. Like
Nice.
we talked about this a few weeks ago for simplicity. I think this was actually after a call. We were having a chat about finances, and you're listening to this billionaire investor, and he's like, the secret to success is forced simplicity. Now, I say disciplined simplicity, but we're talking about the concept of simplicity. People, every time you're adding a new tech stack in, a new project management, a new SOP, you're just making it more complicated. Our agency literally operates off email. We'll talk communicating with clients, internal Slack system for our team, Google Sheets for tracking sheets, and we just do the damn work. We only offer very few services. It's either Google Ads for e-commerce, Google Ads for lead generation, Facebook Ads for lead generation, high converting landing pages, and the data analysis around it. So a lot of agencies are offering a lot of services, and then they've got a lot of team members and then a lot of subsidiary team members. It just gets wild. Oh, yeah. I understand why that happens. I've worked at those agencies, 3 of them. That's why I've taken the good things and applied them to MarketLead, and all the bad things, I'm like, I'm never doing that stuff ever, no matter what, no matter how much money's there, because the money you can always make more of. That time, stress, and energy, like that just goes into projects and stuff that it's not worth it. It's never worth doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah,
because by the way, Cory, you've been asking me a lot of questions, and I don't want to make this seem like it's one-sided, but like every time I say so, if you ask me a question, I want to know your opinion as well. So, okay, what are your thoughts, Cory, right now?
Well, see, in this subject, I can't really offer much because I don't manage a team directly, right? So,
but what do you observe when you work with those agencies? That's the thing, because it's also it doesn't have to be you directly managing it. It could be your observed experience, because you know the craft so well that when you observe a third-party agency that you've got no emotional attachment to, and you see how they're communicating to you, operating, or being like, yeah, this team member wants to do this. What are your thoughts? You're like, dude, how are you even thinking that's an okay strategy, or you're allowing your team to do that? Yeah. Like, what are your thoughts on that stuff?
I think it gets to the core of something that I talk about all the time, which is focusing on the wrong things. Yes. We tend to focus on the shortcuts, and those are enticing. Those are really interesting. There is well-designed ad and just marketing campaigns that are trying to distract you to change your tools, and this isn't good enough, you're missing out, etc. So we are bombarded, especially as entrepreneurs, as soon as these algorithms pick up that we are into business in general, you're going to start getting bombarded by tools and options, and this isn't good enough. Did you know that we do this? And you're going to be distracted, and then you offload some of that distraction onto your team by going, you know what, guys, I think we need to change our, Slack is outdated. Let's go somewhere else. Let's try this new thing. And then you try it with your team for a month or two. They're kind of like, man, I just want to do my job. I don't want to learn this new software and do these onboarding calls and presentations. It's an eye roll, to be honest. Hopefully agency owners, if you're watching this, please listen to this part, because your employees don't usually tell you this stuff, because, it's a 9-to-5 for a lot of these people. They just kind of want to do the job, and they're not usually going to speak up. And most people are pretty conflict avoidant, generally speaking, right? So you're not really going to hear as much of the pushback of like, really, we have to try another PM tool? We have to do another Google sheet for this thing? Like, didn't we already have this solved? Why are we even bothering? And again, focusing on the wrong thing. We have got to be focusing on providing the services that clients are paying us for. Clients are not paying us to stay organized in our PM and try another more optimized one and do from move to this. They don't care. They want you to get the job done. They want you to put more money in their bank accounts. That's what they're paying you for. We want to be organized, sure. And people look to the owners and the C-level executives to have deterministic qualities, right? But we also want them to be organized, and we want them to be decisive, right? That's attractive. We want that. So as employees, we're also looking for that decisiveness in our managers. But if you are going from one tool to the next because you don't think it's good enough, and because you're being distracted by all these different marketing things telling you this is not a good enough channel, or, hey, did you know that this is a new AI thing that you should be trying? When you bounce around, your team can't focus on the job, which means you're not doing the best job at serving your clients. So that's a problem. These people are eventually going to recognize the results are not great, or they're subpar, or maybe it's just everything is really stagnant. Now, they won't be able to trace back to the fact that your team is having to spend 10, 20, sometimes 30% of their time learning these new softwares and tools that get organized. but you're actually you're taking away from what you're getting paid for. So I think that's really my main point, is stop getting distracted by the newest tool. Figure out how to best use the tools you already have made your decision on to use for your team. Only and only if you find that you absolutely need something to better serve the client do you try some other tools. But generally, I'd like to recommend that those are going to be supplementary to the thing you already have built your team to get used to. That would be my thoughts on it.
Mate, what are these like? Look, I've been in the industry for a long time, probably more than I should be, have a bigger company and more money and all this stuff. But I've been in the industry for a long time and booked a few agencies, which I've mentioned. And I've got a lot of mates who run agencies. But what are all these tools that are people talking about? Like, is it things like Optimizer or like, project management tools? Because I don't use any of them. We don't use any of them, and we're killing it. And I'm like, why are these other agencies needing this stuff or thinking they need it when you actually don't? Like, what are some of these tools? And we're not poo-pooing brands, but I'm like, no. Are they just project management tools? Are they ad management tools? Are they ad reporting tools? Like, there's ad analysis tools. Like, what type of ones are you seeing when you're saying these things? Because once again, curious here to learn.
Project management tools, I think, are the most common, and just any kind of communication tools, like shifting from Google Workspace to Outlook, Gmail to Outlook in that case, Microsoft 360, whatever. I think that's the most common. That really takes a ton of time to onboard and for everyone to wrap their head around how we're going to organize our processes and our templates and where everything is stored and how access is going to be shared securely and where do we store the data and all this stuff. I tend to find it's that, not so much marketing tools, though that does happen too, where
I think that's starting to creep up more and more. That's the one that's in the shadow. Everyone's like, oh, should I use these ad tools and tracking tools? But go on.
Yeah, no, I do see probably the most often, because I deal in e-commerce so often, that it's a feed management thing. Hey, have you heard of this one? Almost every day I get this question of, have you heard of this feed management? I'm like, honestly, I've lost track. It seems like there's hundreds of different ones. They all tend to do basically the same thing. And again, this is not throwing shade on feed management tools. There should be a very clear value proposition that they can give you that you can't just do yourself, or that you don't really want to do because it's too resource intensive in a spreadsheet. But to be honest, a lot of the feed management stuff can be and is done by really clever agencies just in Google Sheets, just by building custom rules or inside of Google Merchant Center itself.
This is what we talk about. And I know when we've talked about feed management, you're just like, yeah, dude, I just do it in a Google Sheet. I'm like, so do I. Like this, if anyone's listening to this, I know it's like, it sounds so simplistic and it's been harped on by me. Master Google Sheets. You will save, not only will you save tens of thousands of dollars a year in softwares, you will deliver better outcomes for your clients, and you will end up making more money, and you will work less time manually working on clients. When you were talking about this, all in my head, I'm like, anytime I've had like an issue in the business or like a software goes, I can do this, I just go, I can do that. You just give me an API or like export the data like through a script. I know the formulas and I can customize it towards what my company actually needs, not what these softwares have maybe created. For all our biggest clients, mate, for e-commerce, we only use feed. I only use Google Sheets because you've got the actual manual ability to do stuff, and you can create custom formulas that dynamically do it as well. Now, I know feed management tools can do that, but you don't need them. Like, you don't want to become dependent on third-party tools when you can do it yourself, because at the end of the day, if something changes, like the prices skyrocket or something breaks or their customer support gets really bad, or I don't know, things can happen when you've got like risks, third-party risks. I'm avoiding that as much as possible, just because I know that most of the time companies that go well just boost up their prices and they don't grandfather your price in anymore.
Sure. Yeah, I think there's two schools of thought on that. So I think some people could push back and say, from a business, from a business decision standpoint, if you will, it's some things can be done yourself, but there is that, your most valuable resource is your time, and maybe it's not, at least in your current state of business, not worth it for you to try to build that stuff out yourself. Maybe you just don't have the resources for it in terms of education, skills, or money. It could just be it's not a good time. Okay, that's a good argument, right? Like some people just, instead of
I know what you're getting at, mate. I know what you're getting at.
There is a
product pitch. Product pitch.
There's a place for that. But also, in the other school of thought is some things are so sophisticated that you should not be trying to build it yourself. I usually talk about this in regards to attribution. That's another one that I hear a lot about. Should I use Tripleware? Should I use Northbeam? Should I use Wicked Report? Should I use and here's the thing, guys, is they're all going to be using their own proprietary machine learning. Using your data, but it's also usually going to be using aggregate data, so from other advertisers in some cases. Now, here's the thing. There's always going to be a discrepancy. Like if I have a client that's using Triple Whale and Northbeam, they've used Triple Whale for a while, then they went to Northbeam or whatever, they sometimes will find major discrepancies by ad channel, right? Like Triple Whale will maybe over attribute in their opinion social ads like Facebook. Other cases, Northbeam will maybe not look as great depending on the attribution model and the view that you're clicks and views view that you're looking at. So just always understand that with the attribution tool, that might be worth investing in if cross-channel attribution is really important to you. You want those insights. You probably shouldn't be learning data science to my level where like you actually understand the statistics that are behind these things and the code that actually works behind them. Because if you don't know that stuff, you're going to build something that's going to be terrible and you're going to be making decisions with really bad data. You do not want that. So I think, there's two different schools of thought, but also understand that no tool is ever going to be perfect. There's going to be discrepancies between the tools. So stop chasing the perfect tool, I think, is a really big point here.
Yeah, especially with attribution. That's probably one that I'd be like, if it's needed, get one. Just don't even. That's a waste of time trying to do it yourself. Like it is, that requires like data scientists and actually specialized people to understand all these points and the tracking cookies and all this stuff.
Yep.
The other thing is, once again, those attribution tools are not empirical science. It's more of a guiding direction with a higher probability of being correct than the ad channel. So once again, it's not correct. It's pointing you in the right direction with a higher statistical significance or like ability to actually be more correct. At the same time, in these platforms, there are different attribution modeling. So it's not like if you go from like impressions with like multiple clicks or last click, first click. So then you've also got to make the decision what attribution model you want to do, which will have profoundly wild different outcomes. So at the same time, it's kind of like it gives you a better insight than the ad channel does, but then also it doesn't because you get to choose your own journey and you probably don't know what journey is the best one to choose.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I would also say, and this, Cory, I'd love to just us chatting about this in terms of the attribution tools, but more, once again, processes. Clients who want attribution tools, like how much do you think they should be spending per month on ads? Or is it that they're spending a certain amount and they've got Google and Meta? Or is it like when would you say the minimum thresholds to hit? Because like a lot of e-commerces don't need it. It's just like you spent this much on ads, you got this much in revenue. Stop trying to like that 20% that you're unknown about. It's like just sit down and be humble, just keep doing the things you're doing rather than to be like, how do I like milk this next 1%? What are your thoughts on like when you should start looking for an attribution software?
If you understand what cross-channel attribution even is, if I say that and it goes right over your head, you should Google it. You should use an LLM, whatever you like to use. Yeah. There's so many now. Figure out what that is first. If you don't even know and you don't really understand that, you don't need to be investing in these tools.
No. But Cory, people are talking about it. So I must need it. Cory. No. I see the ads. I see that I'm wasting money if I'm not getting it. So I must get it from day one and pay $300 a month for it.
So I think more so than price, because I think people get too bogged down in, how much am I spending on this thing? And because it's not always inherently clear the value of something until you've already started getting insights from it. So I think that's a tough standpoint for people who haven't even used them yet. But if you are at the point, I would say you're spending I'm going to just say a decent amount of spend across, or your advertising, or you're pushing marketing objectives more aggressively across multiple channels. And I'm going to let you guys self-define that, because everyone, some people, a big investment is $1 million. Some people, a big investment is 10,000, right? It's all relative. If you're at that point where you're like, man, how do we know where we should put more efforts and resources? That's efforts, time, and money. How do we know, and how can we feel more confident on making those allocation decisions? That's probably a good starting point to start exploring attribution channel, or I'm sorry, cross channel attribution tools, because that's the answer to that. That is at least the proposition, and that's the promise of those tools, is to provide you more clear insights, as opposed to you looking at every channel individually and everyone wants to take full credit for the sale. Facebook says, I gave it I showed the video, I should get the full credit for the sale. Google says, no, but we converted on this search term, we should get the credit. I mean, at the end of the day, they can only see what they can see. These things, these third-party attribution tools can give you, I like to say, an unbiased perspective on where attribution credit can lie. I'm not going to say should lie, because again, everything is relative, and not all the tools are going to say the same thing. But that's how I usually look at it, as opposed to just a raw, how much does this cost?
Yeah, interesting. Back in the day with Google Analytics, the older one, there was the assisted conversions tab, which was always really good, because that did give a bit more of a journey there. But attribution is really an interesting one, just because some businesses it's super business critical, but for most it's not. It's just kind of a bit more like, I know for a lot of your clients, Cory, it's probably more business critical.
Oh, it's vital.
For mine, it's not. I'm going to say that. It's not. It's not that the clients are not good or that. It's just like, it's a very clear correlation between how much are we spending and how much are we making. And it's just like, that's all to focus on. All this deep data science is like, focus on other things on your website and your processes and fulfillment and having stock in stock, like all those things before this attribution stuff. I've got a couple of clients that actually use, probably about 3 or 4 that have triple whale, and it's actually just triple whale. Man, I look at it, I'm like, I can't do anything with this. Like, for me personally, I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I get it, but I already kind of knew that. That's just my opinion on it. Once again, from my experience, I haven't seen, but you work with more e-commerce, bigger e-commerce clients, and you probably find better use cases for it. I don't.
Yeah. I really
But if I'm probably representative of most people at the end of the day as well, which is like, it's probably not needed.
I was just going to say,
Triple Whale, if you want to sponsor us, please sponsor us.
Yes. Northern Triple Whale, we are open to sponsorship. I was just going to say, I really value the being able to see the customer journey across different channels. I love that. They started in this DSA, dynamic search ad, non-brand campaign in Google Ads. Looks like there's one touch point that's usually starts there that ends in a conversion. And then usually the second path most often is they see this Facebook ad campaign, and then email tends to convert them. And like, just being able to see that, and you want a lot of data points for these things, right? You're just saying 3, and that's a common path. Well, that doesn't really tell you that much, right? And if it's a 70-day, or 90-day window or something, right? It doesn't really tell you. But when you've got a lot of data, that is fantastic to see common conversion paths, and just to be able to see, when we make major marketing changes in the business, if we start pushing more aggressively on email, how does that affect SEO? What are we seeing? Is that, seeing the ebbs and flows as we move things around, as we move efforts or spend around, how can we see what's happening, how that's affecting other channels? Great way to get those kind of insights.
So in this case, you're looking at the conversion path, which is like the attribution path. And you did mention that, if you had 3 of them doing this, it is not significant. How many conversions or sales that are triggered through the website would you say, okay, once you're getting like 300, 500, 1,000 sales a month, and then it's probably like, that's a good indication to start looking at this, because then it'll start to show patterns that are of statistical significance?
I'm going to give you like a basic stat 101, terrible answer, in the sense that it is sort of a bare minimum, which is the magic number. I'm putting that in air quotes for all the listeners. It is not a magic. It's not really magic, but it's 30, right? Bare minimum.
Oh, really?
30.
I thought it was 100.
Bare minimum, Michael. Bare minimum here, 30.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is even going back to the survey days. People on the streets. Not that they don't do surveys anymore, but sort of stats 101. We want to see at least 30 data points for something before we. And again, this is not going to be a high confidence with 30, but we know there's a lot of advertisers that are not even going to get 30 conversions in a month. Sometimes not even in a quarter, because it's
not at MarketLead, mate. We get hundreds.
okay.
Not at Ads by Cory. He gets thousands.
But that's the it's the bad answer. It's the best. It's the best. It's the best. How do I say this? Worst answer? I know it's not really an easy question to answer because there's actually more thorough statistics that have to be done to really assess that. You're really looking for incrementality more than you're looking for necessarily just a minimum sample size. But yeah, you don't want to be the real thing here is you don't want to be making decisions with really small sample sizes. Yeah. But that's a whole topic. Stats topic is going to bore everybody to death. But yeah. 30, preferably hundreds, preferably 300, 3,000, whatever. There's no reason there's 3. It's just an example.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, I think it's just important just to even just say this stuff because we think about this stuff all day and every day. People watching this do not. Right. So our answer is what our 20% answer is probably better than most people's 90%. Not because we're smarter, it's just because we spend so much time thinking about it. So I usually use 100 as a base minimum of setting as a baseline for anything of statistical significance of clicks, conversions, any other data points that are related, not impressions. Impressions I usually would look at a few thousand just because, impressions you can just get anyway. And if you do it wrong, you can just be getting impressions and then they're just going to mess up everything.
Yeah, click-through rate out of 30 impressions is probably not that statistically sound.
Yeah, in 15% CTA. Yeah, and then it goes down to 0.5 over the next week. You're damn it, what happened? I thought I was onto something here. So,
go ahead.
No, you go, mate. You go.
I was just gonna say this is it's a question that I was really trying so hard to figure this out. I can't remember how long, maybe 8 years ago or something, where I was just like, man, how do I know when I have enough data, right? This is way before I started getting deeper down the path of data science and statistics. And, I literally had to go to a bookstore because I couldn't find anything online that I could really feel good about. And I just looked at this Stats 101 textbook and I went through it and it mentioned the whole 30 minimum thing. And just think about it, guys. It's not a magic number you're looking for. There's no perfect number. The less data points you have, the less confident you can feel that that's what you're looking at is a true insight that is likely to continue. The more you have, to Michael's point, 100, 1,000, the more confident you can feel. And in our case, as PPC account managers, making the optimization and feeling like that was a good decision. The less you have. So here's the thing. There's speed of business, right? There's this concept of speed of business. We can't wait forever before saying, okay, now it's statistically significant. Now we can let it ride. That might take 6 months, and we can't let the business fail in the meantime. So you're not always going to have 30 enough to make a real great confident decision. Sometimes you're going to have to act sooner than that, but that is sort of the minimum ideal number.
Yeah, but 30 is not a lot anyway. And also remember, this isn't just quantitative of 30 or 100 or 1,000. It's the qualitative. You want to make sure that those 30 sales are quality sales, not just a $2 sale. If it's something for $500 or 150 average order value, you also want to make sure you're just not hitting thresholds just to meet thresholds because the quality of the data going in is going to be the quality of the outputs you get out. So if you're just trying to hit a numerical number, you could be once again, about the impression joke I said before. It's if you go to hit a number, but the data is extremely poor, you're building a model or a statistical model for yourself that's based on flawed data, which you don't want. You don't want to be modeling and predicting your business and the attributions and your investment decisions in advertising and other things based on poor quality data. So have the patience, but also the awareness of the quality side or the qualitative side, because if you don't, that will ruin everything, because the quality of the data at the start will dictate the data that comes through, the insights you have, the attribution, the business decisions you make, all this stuff. And you could be going on this wild down a rabbit hole that was just never supposed to happen if you just kind of shifted the data quality a little bit just at the start.
And I was going to say that also reminds me another point, which is really important, folks, that it's not always going to be we're waiting for 30 data points, and this just as an easy example before we do something. In marketing, we are always playing this balancing act where we're doing this balancing act where, timing in marketing is very important, right? I don't think that gets talked about enough, timing. So if we're waiting for this magic number, let's say 30, before we make a change, before we react to something that's happening, we could miss the boat, as we like to say in the States, could miss this opportunity to jump on a positive outlier. For example, let's say you've got 10 conversions in this ad group or this campaign. Again, I'm trying to keep it really simple for you guys. There's more nuance than this, but let's say you get those 10 conversions. Conversion rates have skyrocketed because some external event, some act of God or whatever you want to call it, has really driven demand for particular products that are being targeted in that campaign. You don't want to be sitting around waiting for 30 conversion points while all of your competitors might be taking advantage through either a smart bidding or otherwise on that conversion rate jump. Now, smart bidding has that promise that it's going to be able to jump on those things, but it's not immediate, right? It's not going to be like recognizing that immediately. You need to also do your job as an account manager to recognize those huge spikes and take advantage. And sometimes you just can't wait forever to take advantage. You might miss that huge opportunity. So that also brings up the timing point around sample size.
Yeah. And that also loops back to just having what we're talking about at the start about like the tools and softwares and stuff, is having good tools that you've built to identify opportunities when they're happening.
Yes.
And this is the thing. You just can't just like go like, oh, what tools are out there? It's like you've got to build it, because it's not about the ad platform. It's actually about the client, the industry, and the ad platform. So like the ad platform is probably like 1/3 of it. There's the client's business and their data and their trends. There's the industry that they're in, so them and their versus their competitors. And then there's the Google or the Facebook with the advertising aspect as well. And then this is good to loop back to like what we're originally chatting about, like operations and tools and all these things, is you've got to know your clients. You've got to know their industries. You've got to know the data. You've got to know the trends. Like this stuff isn't just like, oh, what's the next hack I can do in Google Ads? That Google Ads probably has nothing to do with it. It more has to do with industry and market trends in the business and their data and their decision making and what they're implementing in their business more than the advertising. I always say that the advertising is supposed to reflect the client's business and their industry, not the Google Ads is just there just as its silo thing, just to kind of like pump into the business. It's got to be like, it's got to be a feedback loop for the business.
Yep.
And like following what the business's goals and objectives is, not just like, oh, cool, we noticed these trends in Google Ads. So what?
Right.
So
exactly.
What? Who cares?
Yeah. Yeah. If you're speaking conversions and the client is speaking profits, you're not talking about the same thing. As much as it seems like you are, you need to be on the same page. You need to be talking about the same things that are important to your client. Now, sometimes your client's focusing on the wrong things, and it's your job to redirect them diplomatically, professionally, to the right things in order for them to achieve the real goals that they have, which again is to put money in their pocket, to grow the business, to pay their staff, et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes you need to redirect those things, but overall, make sure you're focusing on the right things. We talk about that all the time.
Yeah. And I think that's even once again, what we're talking about at the start is, what do you focus on? Like, what are your operation? And I said the things we do is like we focus on communication, because the quality of your communication and how you communicate will change how what the client focuses on and unconsciously focuses on consistently. If they're constantly focused on this one thing, like we've got to hit this and this, you're like, dude, like I won't say dude to them, but I'm like in my head, I'm like, that's not important. This is the number. And that's what I say to most clients now. I'm like, look, we can report on that, but that's not what's important. What we've noticed with our clients, all these businesses we're working with, and our experience is these are the numbers you need to work towards. So let's just focus on this for now and see what the outcomes are. And then magically we hit those goals, and then their goals are met as well. Got to always remember that when you work with clients, either as an agency or as an individual, you've got to ask them for what they want, but then also deliver what they need. And if you're an expert, you should know intuitively what they need. You don't come in going, oh yeah, I know what they need. You've got to listen to them and listen to what they think they want. And then also go, based on my experience in this industry or in this ad channels and all these areas, because their sample size of what they want is N equals 1 or number equals 1, because it's just based on their experience for their business. Because if you're a good specialist and you've been doing it for years, you should have worked with dozens, hundreds, thousands of businesses. And you should see patterns unconsciously that you're like, yeah, he might want to focus on that. But based on my experience, even just like my intuition, it should be this, 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 and this, because I've seen 12 other businesses who are similar in nature do these things and get better results. So your own sample size from direct experience is much higher. So then you've got to make sure, then when you've got clients saying, oh, let's focus on this, you can be like, we can, but these are probably more important numbers based on my experience, these types of businesses that are relevant to you. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. But that requires communication. You can't just go, yeah, I can focus on that number because the client wants to focus on it. You've got to really bring your expertise in as well. And that's when you start reducing time on the account, because you're working on the stuff that gets results, not the stuff that they want you to work on that doesn't get results. So this is the economics of time of, like, once again, at the start when you're like handing things over to the team, because we're so aligned on what we look for and identifying where gaps are at, the time on accounts is down by like 50 to 80%, because the data analysis, we do more time on data analysis, so then we're spending less time in the ad account.
Yeah. So that brings me to because I think one thing we haven't touched on, we had an episode, I can't remember how many months ago, around dashboards, but that brings me to that. I think it really is so you and I have said this over and over again. If there is one thing I could give advice to for any agency, even again, as a freelancer, you got to build yourself a dashboard. I don't care if that's in Google Sheets. I don't care if it's in Excel. I don't care if it's through code and Python and using Dash or whatever you want to use. Streamlit, if you want to use Looker Studio, if you want to use some third-party paid software, go for it. Just build yourself a dashboard that all your clients can get plugged into, and that you can customize so that you can track the things that are important to you and your client, but mostly to your client, because that is what's going to determine most of the optimizations that you're making and the decisions that you're making inside of the account.
Mate, I'm so glad you said that. I had a chat with my business partner probably 2 weeks ago, maybe last week. Time goes by fast. And I said to him, the data that we pull for clients would literally take someone probably 45 minutes, 50 minutes to pull it. And then it's not even dynamic, just for a call or a monthly report. Now you do that across dozens of clients. You're just not going to be able to do it. And then that's why most agencies are spending so much time on manual reporting or manually checking accounts. You need dashboards. And more importantly, you need simplified dashboards. So I think every business should just have like a one-page dashboard that just gives them like the health check on all parts of their business. If you don't want to do it in your business, at least on your advertising for the different channels, how much you're spending, and have the dynamic nature to choose it by month or by year and have some tables and graphs in it. The biggest issue that I see is a business is going, we're not making money, or we've got this problem in our business, let's take this action. But the problem with that is they just assume that there's a problem in that area of their business, and they're like, oh, let's just change something in the ads or something in the process. And it's like, what data do you have to support that? And they're like, oh, the sales are down. It's like, no, but what data do you actually have to support that? Yeah. And this is the thing. You cannot identify gaps unless you've actually got data. Now, some people might go, oh, but you can't have data on this. You can. You can actually have data on everything. The problem is your thinking patterns are limited, that you don't realize that you can have data on it. A lot of the times, once again, you can use Excel. If you just export data in there, you can do pretty crazy stuff with sum ifs, count ifs, like filters, all this stuff. But if you start taking actions on stuff in business based on like a gap that's not based on data, you will start breaking things that are working. So the thing that's probably even propping things up when the business is broken, you're probably going to break that, because it's usually the thing that's working that you're like, oh, it must be that thing. The biggest thing over my years is there's a problem in the business, let's fix something in the ads. And it's like, dude, the ads is what bring you in the leads and the sales. Like, don't touch this. Fix your business. Like, no, if we just get a lower cost per lead or like a higher conversion rate, then everything will work. It's like, no, if your sales rate's like fucking 2%, that's not like, and more leads is not going to fix this. Like, you've got to increase your sales rate from 2% to 20%, and then you'll start to see shifts in your business.
Wait. So, Michael, you're saying if I raise click-through rates and lower CPCs, that's not going to make people want to buy my products and services more? I'm confused. That's what I've been told, isn't it?
Actually, you know what, Cory? You're right. It is. I'm just lazy. I'm just super lazy. I'm like, nah, these clowns can like pay me money for them to do more work. No, the reality is, man, like, this is a big issue. And especially when you've got different data points, like offline data points, and because we're talking about ads here, we'll come from the ad perspective of just like, you've got your add data, spend, clicks, conversion rates, leads, sales, whatever, and then you can import offline data. A big thing that we do, because we work with property developers, is, we've got ad platform data in terms of clicks, leads, conversion, spend. Actually, no, we actually use offline leads because they're more accurate towards what the real number is, not what the platform says. But it's also Google and Facebook. We split it down by channel. And then also we're getting offline data of how many Calendly bookings they're getting, and then also how many deposits and sales. So literally within one dashboard, automated, within 5 seconds, I can see the direct full funnel from first impression to actual sales and deposits, including bookings of Calendly bookings, real ones, and also real offline leads as well, and all these other data points in a moment. It does take time, and it also takes expertise beyond just going, how do I program this sheet? It's the thinking of, what do I need to put into this dashboard that's actually super relevant, but not too much that now I've got another column that's irrelevant, but not one less that's actually emitting. Yeah. It requires expertise, and you can't just download a dashboard what someone else says. It requires you knowing the client and their industry. It's not about the ad platform or knowing sheets or a dashboard. It's about those two things.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the first thing I always say. It's a guiding light and it doesn't seem related necessarily on its surface, but clearly defining the objectives and ensuring that you're aligning on the main goals before diving into your daily tasks. That is the starting point of being organized. You must know very clearly what the objectives of the clients are, because again, that's going to be your guiding light to the things you're going to be doing on a daily basis.
Yeah. And most of the time, if we're being real, it's common sense. It's get more sales and the same ROAS, or just get more leads, high quality leads. And look, that's fine, but actually set that and be clear at the start. Never make assumptions. That's a big thing.
Exactly.
Never assume anything. Yep. Always act dumb. Yesterday morning, I had a call with a client, and I was leading a strategy for their sales data internally. I'm the ads team. I'm the ads company. I'm telling them internally about numbers that they should be managing themselves. And it's not bad. It's just I think about this stuff. But I said from the start, I'm going to ask a lot of questions, and you can ask me a lot of questions. There's no such thing as a dumb question, except there's dumb people who don't ask questions. So if anything comes up, you've got to ask. Never make assumptions. Mm-hmm. And as we're going through this, people would be like, oh, this is dumb. And I'm like, they say something. I'm like, I didn't even know that. Now I do, because you got to realize you can't assume anything with data. And in business, there's this thing called a key person risk, which is a person who's got, knowledge or skills. They leave the business and you lose that knowledge. But there's the key person risk of just internal people who hold all the knowledge up here, and other people in the company who need that don't know it, but they don't know that they don't know it. And because of that, by having conversations about data and just never assuming anything, it's crazy what people who even work internally at the company either don't know or will learn just from you asking questions. So always ask questions and push to get an answer, because these are the small bits of gold that literally transform businesses, because you can feed that into the ad account, how you structure it, what your strategy is, and at the end of the day, how you do reporting and dashboards. This is the stuff that makes clients go from making a few 100,000 from ads to millions. This is the gold. Most people won't go into it, and that's the good thing.
I was just going to say it's so crucial, and I have to remind agency owners and marketers of this all the time, because they get sort of just silence from the client in some cases, or a big delay on hey, what's the goal here? Are we trying to maximize volume? Are we trying to increase profit volume, revenue volume? Are we trying to net sales? Are we trying to increase the efficiency and the profitability of the ad spend? What are we focusing on? What's the major goal for your business right now? What is it? Because what happens is they don't push enough, and then they're trying to achieve often the impossible, which is to increase the profitability while scaling and increase in the volume. And those two goals tend to conflict from an advertising perspective. There's different optimizations you make in order to achieve those things. Yes, you're going to always be doing both to some degree. You want to be cutting wasteful ad spend while putting more money towards things that are doing well, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, if you're not sure what the client's main goal is. There's going to be micro goals, sure, but what is the main goal across the account for their business? Maybe it's brand versus non-brand. Maybe it's even more complex by product type during certain seasons, whatever it is. If you are not really clear and you're not pushing the client, you're going to end up in a scenario where you're like, I thought we were successful. And the client's like, nah, actually we're real close to this not being profitable for us. And you weren't aware of that. That's also on you. Now it's mostly on the business owner. They need to be communicating with you, but if you're not pushing them, I actually believe that is a big part of our job, is to sometimes push clients, just like any good business consultant will do, to clearly define those objectives, because that makes a huge difference, and all the difference really, in helping them achieve that goal through whatever service that you're offering from a marketing perspective.
Mate, amazing. And just to add on to that, you said it may be more complicated than it needs to be. This is the other side. A lot of ad specialists, it may actually be simpler than you think it needs to be. But because you're so caught up in your technical aspects, you make it more complicated, and therefore you actually miss the clear objectives. It could just be like, we need this many more leads. And then you're getting so caught tweaking cost per clicks or impression shares and talking about the other clients. Like, they don't care. The clients I work with, I specifically make sure that they're very simple clients that have high revenue and high upside opportunities. I don't want to be drilling down into these like crazy, weird 1%. That's not me. That's not my agency. I don't do that stuff anymore, because that's not the direction that I personally or the company are moving in. Sometimes it's actually simpler than it needs to be, but people think because of the way the mind works, they got to make it more complicated. So just be aware that you've got to tune into the client and their outcomes. It might be, like you said, you might require actually more complexity because what the client's needs are, but you actually might require more simplicity and get out of your own way and stop trying to be like the best ads guru and just deliver what they want. Yeah. And sometimes it's really easy.
Yeah, the overthinking can often lead to over optimizing, and you don't have many data points. You're just playing around with different campaign settings and trying the newest hack, and you never give anything enough time to actually do well. A lot of doing this well at a high level is to be able to be patient and know what you're looking at, and know that it does need more time. And that's not always an easy thing. It's not always really obvious. That's why we get paid what we get paid, is to know the difference between just finicking with all the stuff and just looking busy and going, you know what, this needs more time. I'm not going to touch it because I know better. My experience tells me better. The data is telling me there's not enough stability yet. That's why we're the experts. That's what people pay us to do it. And you gotta, I think that brings me to one of the bigger points I wanted to make before we wrap up, which is you've really got to know your benchmarks in your account, right? And this is if you're doing it yourself. This doesn't matter how much data volume you have going. You've got to know your benchmarks. There's so many pieces to that. Your KPIs, your typical performance deviations and standards, your seasonality. We've talked about this a million times, right? Your seasonality patterns, your competitive landscape. What sells the most, what doesn't, what are the normal underperformers, overperformers, your inventory levels. You've got to know your benchmarks for your account, for your business. Maybe it's complex and it's by brand, like I said before. Maybe it's by product type, whatever. But you got to understand, what does normal look like in your account? It's a big part of staying organized, is so that you don't freak out over little things, and so that you can go into it and sit down and open the account however you like to manage your account, whether it's in the interface, through an API, whatever, and go, what do I need to focus on today? Well, first off, what's the objective of the client? Are they scaling? Are they driving for efficiency because things are not profitable? What's the objective? Okay, great. I'm going to start with that. I'm not going to forget that. We don't want to get lost in the data and then all of a sudden go, oh, wait, why am I spending so much time looking for every little negative keyword when the client's telling me we need to scale right now? So why am I spending 2 hours looking at search terms, right? Set up automations, make it easy on yourself, make sure you've got anomaly detection, etc. Cool. You want to have things automated, of course. You don't want things to go out of hand, but focus on that objective and know those benchmarks so you know what is normal, so that's really going to drive what kind of optimizations you're going to make. And then obviously just stick to a schedule, guys. I know it's easier said than done. Stick to a schedule, my goodness.
But it's simple. Just put it in your calendar and that's it. Just get on with it. Yeah.
Exactly.
People make this more complicated, I think, because a lot of people feel like they do need to prove themselves early on. Yeah. And like, I just wanted to add in with what you were saying about like people over optimizing. people feel the pressure over to optimize because like, I need to be doing more work on the account. It's like, you don't. And that time that you feel like you should be working, do data analysis and communicate that data analysis to the client. Don't go, oh, I'm being paid, I should be doing this many hours, or whatever your rationalization is. If you see a pattern, go do the analysis and then communicate that analysis. And that's more than enough.
Yes.
Clients don't care about how much time they come putting in. They care about outcomes and actually how often they're being communicated with or how the communication style is. So just remember that. Mate, I've got to jump off. So let's do this. Cory Lindholm, how do people find you, mate?
All right, guys, my website is Ads by Cory. You can reach out to me there if you're interested in doing business. You can also find me on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Spotify.
Nice. Michael Nadalin on LinkedIn, marketlead.com.au, MarketLead on YouTube. There's the magic. Cory, mate, this is like my favorite episode so far because I've learned so much and it genuinely felt like a real brain download. This stuff works, guys. Just implement it. Just have self-trust. Use your intuition. You'll get results.
Yes. All right. Thank you guys for watching and listening. We'll catch you in the next one.
See ya.
See ya.